Welcome back to another great episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels, or City of Demons, which I prefer to say these days. La La Land, Hollywood, and all other names you could call Los Angeles. And not to mention, we are internationally syndicated. Actually, as a matter of fact, our home base is 107.7 FM UPRN, New Orleans, Louisiana, and iHeartRadio, Spreaker. Geez, there's so many. Deprogrammed Radio in London and Leeds, that were their terrestrial stations, not to mention their internet stations all over the world. There are a lot of places you could hear this, folks. Now, before I start with today's guest, who's amazing, by the way, he has so much knowledge on so many topics, as opposed to someone who can come on and only talk about, say, ghosts, or just talk about, say, Mothman or Flatwoods Monster. No, we're going to touch much more than that. Phantoms and monsters. That should be a big hint. As a matter of fact, those of you who are in my YouTube channel, which is the same name as the show, Dr. J Radio Live, that is DRJ Radio Live, you've probably seen our guest, which is the one and only Mr. Lon Strickler. Lon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and I know it's been a pleasure when I've been reading up about you before I called you. Before we start, I think it's a good time for us to pay some homage to our dear friend Stanton Friedman. I would think by now that everybody in the chat and everybody listening wherever you are knows that the godfather of ufology has passed away. 2 weeks ago, when you all were asking him questions and said you have more to ask, and I said I'll bring him back, he did not sound sick. This guy definitely had energy in him. It was the same Stanton Friedman. So, Stan, wherever you are, I hope you finally found the truth of what you're looking for and are reunited with your family. Now, let me go to you, Lon. How did you get involved in the paranormal?
That's a loaded question. I actually started when I was younger. I'm an intuitive, and I started to realize that I was sensing spirit energy. Now, I was born and raised near Gettysburg, so I was on the battlefield a lot. I used to ride my bike to the battlefield during the weekends and during the summer, and I'd spend a lot of time on the battlefield. So one particular summer day, I was in the area of the what they'd call Death Valley. It's between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field. And I was on the road pedaling my bike, and suddenly I can't really explain how it hit me, but I started hearing cannon fire, gunfire, screaming. I got off my bike, stood there a bit, and I was starting to sense all kinds of strange things. I mean, it got to the point where I thought I was seeing soldiers, but it was very blurry, but I was definitely sensing something was around me, and it was like all hell broke loose.
Well, that is the place that had, in that area, just in Gettysburg, what is it, 50,000 people died in that one battle?
Yeah, it was the highest casualty number, well, since Antietam the year before. So it was a 3-day battle, and the casualties were horrendous.
I've always wondered, and I just assume because of so much energy being there, so many people passing away suddenly, all the tormenting people who died in the surgery, which I don't even know if you can call what they did surgery. I mean, a good surgeon required 3 tools. One to cut through flesh, one to cut through nerves and things like that, and the final one to cut through bone. The faster you were, the better of a surgeon you were.
Yeah, it seemed like they had one good bone saw, and that kind of did the whole trick for all of them.
Ha! It's all three. Yeah, that's right. They must have gotten all three in one. And yeah, I remember seeing so many documentaries. They're still playing to this day, where if you were the fastest that you were able to cut off a limb,
Mm.
that's the people who were injured and had to be amputated would go to that so-called surgeon. I mean, obviously not like today with a medical degree, long before penicillin. And I would assume during these amputations some people passed, and obviously the people who had their limbs amputated having no antibiotics, and obviously the dirt of war, no ability to wash yourself in periods of time. Infections were really probably all around them, and I would think that people would die horrible deaths, losing a limb like their arm, feeling like it still can grab things, yet their arm was gone, and then die from that infection.
Well, it's pretty well documented that there were more deaths associated with unsanitary conditions because of battle wounds or amputations. There was also a lot of disease on the battlefields. Cholera and dysentery was rampant. So yeah, a lot more. I think a lot more people, a lot more soldiers died from something other than being shot.
You mean from obviously like infections and things
Yeah.
like that, and also if people just got the flu, which was this was decades before the Spanish flu hit the Americas, right?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
yeah, I could just imagine, just like you said, the unsanitary conditions. They probably didn't even wash the bone cutting tool before they used it on the next person.
It was pretty horrendous. It was, if you believe what you see in the films, and I've done a lot of reading on the Civil War, it was pretty bad.
So when you said you were in Gettysburg, where you said you raised, right?
I was raised in Hanover, Pennsylvania, which is about 11 miles
Close.
east of, yeah, Gettysburg. So I was there all the time.
So I'm assuming with all the what you felt the presence around you, I've seen amazing videos that I do not believe to be doctored or CGI or anything like that. That are soldiers, the dead soldiers, walking across the street or just appearing out of nowhere. I even remember this unsolved mysteries case where these two, or it was a group of people reenacting the Gettysburg battle, a lot of Civil War enactments. And so during a break, a couple gentlemen were off to the side having a smoke, and this bearded man wearing the same uniform as them walked up to them, and I don't know what he said, but he handed them two cartridges for their guns.
Hmm.
And only later was the cartridges tested, and they were found to be pristine, unused bullets from the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, the only explanation to me, considering I love paranormal, is that that was a ghost interacting with what he possibly thought was the Gettysburg War or battle still going on.
Yeah, there have been stories like that. A lot of times at reenactments, someone will turn up where the participants will believe it's an actual reenactor as well. And it turns out nobody knows who it is, and it's a specter of a fallen soldier. Gettysburg has a lot of these specters, phantoms show up at different locations. Little Round Top, Devil's Den, along Cemetery Ridge have been probably the most active. And I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories over the years.
Now, let me switch gears to your blog, Phantoms and Monsters, which is read by tens of thousands of people. How often do you write in your blog, or is it published anywhere?
Well, I go ahead and write the blog. There's a free newsletter of the blog, which is distributed every day. People can sign up for it and receive it in their email. I write all through the week and on Saturday, so it's 6 times a week.
Wow. Okay, you're definitely dedicated. That's almost one. That literally is one day short of someone who would be writing for, say, the New York Times or LA Times, a story for it where they have to come up something new. I mean, it wouldn't be a newspaper if it didn't have news, meaning something that just happened, not from weeks before unless it was uncovered, but it has to be something fresh and new. Now, let me ask you something, because people are even talking about it. This is about the thumbnail I put up, flying humanoids. I've heard of flying humanoids. I've actually seen a video of one that a friend of mine took, but the video that he took of this flying humanoid, if it was to scale, assuming that the actual torso was, say, normal human sized, around under 6 feet or so, the arms look like they would be, I don't know, 8 to 10 feet, and the legs even longer. So that's not what I'm assuming is what you have been investigating in Chicago. Let's talk about that for a moment, or for as long as we can.
Okay. Well, in March of 2017, actually, we got the first report in April of 2017. It was a report that was submitted to MUFON, and my friend Manuel Navarrete, who is a UFO investigator in Chicago, contacted me about this. He knew I was interested in winged humanoids, flying humanoids, Mothman, and such. So this first sighting took place in Oz Park in Chicago. A woman who was an attorney was walking her dog in the evening, and she came across this 7-foot tall dark being with huge wings that extended above it and out the back. And it scared the dog. The dog actually cowered behind her. And as she watched it, it turned slightly to look at her, and it had very bright red eyes. And then it suddenly jettisoned itself up into the air without spreading its wings. And when it got, it came to an apex, which she really couldn't see by that time, she heard it scream as it took off. So that was the first sighting that I actually saw from that period. Now, there had been these winged humanoid sightings in Chicago before. In particular, in 2011, there were 3 sightings in the summer of 2011 in Chicago, which were reported. And there was actually a photograph taken of something that looked like almost like a bat, but the wings were kind of more of a triangle shaped. Well, anyway, we got this sighting in Oz Park. Manuel, even though he came off on the MUFON site, he was able to run down this witness and talk to her. So there were more sightings actually coming on the MUFON CMS. There were 2 other sightings that came on there. One was in another park in nearby there. Then there was another sighting of what somebody called a lacusa. Now, lacusa is like an owl, a large owl. In fact, it is something of a winged monster or a winged being that has been known to inhabit or said to inhabit the Rio Grande area of Texas and Mexico. So this is what they were calling it. It was actually perched on top of a basketball rim in a park, and several people had seen it. Very similar to the description of the first sighting, but the wings in the first sighting seemed to be more like that of the Mothman, and then this one had wings that looked almost like an owl. So at this point, I was getting to where I wanted to start getting these direct sightings to me. So I started running advertisements uh, through Google and through local chat rooms and forums, and we started receiving these sighting reports. And eventually, as the year went on, most of the sightings were between March and up until August, September of that year. We had over 50 sightings during that period, and most of the descriptions were of a tall, dark being anywhere from 6 to 7 foot in height, sometimes a little bit smaller, but a wingspan anywhere from 10 to 15 foot, and that the wings were described as being bat-like or gargoyle-like. The body was thin with a small head, and the red eyes were seen on, I'd say, the majority of these sightings.
I'm glad you brought up the wings, because I just, as a matter of fact, said this yesterday to Dark Waters, and I've said this throughout the years. Whenever I go to a church and see an icon or an artist representation of an angel, to me, I figured, well, that just is the painter trying to let us know that through whether technology or through some superpowers, they have the ability to fly. Especially when you come to terms in the Bible of those who came from the heavens above. Heavens meaning sky at the time. I mean, they didn't know any better. But now you're actually showing the other side, which are beings with actual wings.
Oh yeah, I mean these these beings did have wings, and many times people saw them flying, but for whatever reason, majority the witness statements stated that they never saw the wings flapping, that they had some type of propulsion other than the flapping wings. And we kind of went through the gamut of what this thing actually could be, anywhere from mechanical to anything else that'd be man-made, even somebody in a squirrel suit. But the maneuvering that people witnessed and the speed kind of took that out of consideration. We also checked into the possibility that it would be a large bird that was mistaken for one of these things, but that just didn't pan out because of the size and because of the wing structure and the head and such. So people were seeing something. Very few, I'd say very few copycats, if any, as far as the reports go, because most of these people were very sincere. They had not heard of the previous sightings, and they were just trying to find answers for what they actually saw.
So, in that short period of time with the initial 50, would you consider this a wave, as many people who study UFOs see that certain locations in certain years have waves where they're just inundated with craft?
I'd say so. I mean, I'd call it a flap. We're still getting sightings. Most of the sightings now are coming from northern Illinois up into southern Wisconsin, but we are getting sightings of similar type beings right now, and we're taking those sightings into consideration. At this present time, we've got over 80 sightings.
Now, you mentioned so far it's 80 to 85. Is that what you investigated, or is that just what people have said? Because obviously, thankfully now, as opposed to 30, 40 years ago, people would be locked up in asylums or be given, antipsychotic drugs if they reported this. But now people are more susceptible. However, you still have that large group of people who do not want to report this. So, do you think that the number of 80 to 85 is actually drastically higher because that's just the people that reported it?
I think that's a very conservative number. The sightings that we did, reports we did receive that, we couldn't verify or actually talk to the witness or, you know, receive information that seemed credible, we just discounted. So that 80 to 85 number, I think, is very conservative.
Yeah, I would definitely think so because I'm even guilty of not reporting my own UFO sightings, and this is just paying a little homage to Stan Friedman. Like you even mentioned before we came on the air, he was literally on 2 weeks ago, and last week I didn't do any shows because I was in Hawaii. I did some live streams, and I created a nice little video which everybody out there listening, I'll post it up tomorrow, Ancient Aliens of Hawaii. But he said every time he would go speak and he would say, okay, with a raise of hands, how many of you have seen something unidentified that's, uh, you know, more unidentified than, say, something that could be plausibly explained, such as a balloon or something like that, a kite. And he said a lot of hands would go up. Then he'd follow up with the question is, how many of you that have seen something actually reported it? And he said about 10%. And I definitely agree with that number because if you see a stranger, you're in a group of a party or wherever you are, and the topic of UFOs come up, unless someone knows somebody personally, I don't know that that many people would really just start talking about aliens coming into their bedroom and UFOs in the sky, etc. So me, myself, and I are guilty of doing the exact same thing, not saying anything in 1984, 1990. The only one I did mention because it was caught on camera with 50 other people was in 2012. But that's why when you said conservative number, that falls definitely in line with all the other paranormal aspects.
Oh yeah, I mean, paranormal, supernatural, any type of event. Uh, Most people are not going to report it. They're just going to store it in the back of their mind and say, "Yeah, okay, I don't believe I saw that," and somebody's going to think I'm crazy. So that still happens. It's not as bad as it used to be, I think. More people, I think, are more open-minded than what they used to be. Of course, you got the internet and all these paranormal TV shows, radio shows, and such, and it's more out into the mainstream. So I think people, for the most part, are less inhibited about contacting a reporting agency or an investigator.
Agreed. Now, I'd let a few minutes, more than a few minutes, go by in the chat so some people can start building things up and more people can hop on in. So let me go there because there are some things that are to you. This is Manuel Silva wants to know if you think that there are demons.
I believe there's evil. As far as what people consider demons, I don't know. I mean, I personally do not believe in the demon in the religious format or aspect. It's I believe there's evil. There are spirits that are malevolent, and I think that's what people experience. But as far as an actual demon or something that is associated with Lucifer, the devil, or fallen angels, I'm not sure. But I personally do not believe that.
Well said. Now let me get to the next one. Before I jump to the next one, Starseed, let me say this publicly to you. As a matter of fact, when I released that video, which was highly produced with the help of the Cousins brothers in Hawaii, yes, I learned a lot about Hawaii and its history of King Kamehameha and all that stuff. You'll see, folks. Okay, here's the next one for you, which is Frankie Zomboy. Had any disasters been reported near the area that people reported, like the Mothman, these new sightings?
In the Chicago area, no, we haven't. We haven't associated any of the sightings with a harbinger or a portent or some type of disaster. Of course, the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was associated with the Silver Bridge collapse. I think I had a lot to do with, being a small town and the loss of so many lives. 46 people actually died on that bridge.
Wow.
And the fact that the Mothman was seen before that actually happened, or it said it was seen. I think in a way to try to explain the disaster, being around the holidays and such, I think it was kind of something that people associated to kind of explain what had happened. John Keel kind of pushed it a little bit in the Mothman prophecies, but as far as actual harbingers, I have heard a lot of associations with disasters and winged being sightings, but at this point, as far as in Chicago, we haven't seen anything that can be connected to that.
Roll Pfeiffer Muller. First, let me just give a thank you for always being in the chat and always writing amazing things in the comments from the videos afterwards. I will definitely talk to you, Roll, about the cemetery. I don't know that Lon really would be interested. I'll just say it, Lon, since I'm asked to convey this to you. I visited quite a few cemeteries when I was in Hawaii, and I live streamed from one of them. I was alone in the middle of the night, completely pitch black dark. If it wasn't for the small light your phone gives off when you turn it on, the flashlight, I would have been tripping over tombstones. Now, the audio was bad, and I know it was uninhabited at least for a couple miles in the different directions. Yet there was crazy sounds, not of like people wailing or anything like that, almost like demonic sounds of like, wolves or things like that you wouldn't expect to be in Hawaii. And that was one of the reasons I ended up taking the video down, was because I was hoping that people could see it. Now let me get to you the question that he asks for you. He asks, are you familiar with the work of Fred Saluga and others?
I know Fred Saluga, yes.
Okay. Can you fill me in? I don't know who he is. I hate to say that.
I mean, I've known Fred. I can't say we're associates. I'll be honest with you, I don't particularly care for Fred that much. But he is associated with Pennsylvania MUFON.
Okay.
And he's also, I don't know, he's been someone who's kind of been contentious with some of the things I have been investigating over the years, me and my associates.
This is from Lasha Senyak. Have you ever noticed that a lot of these winged things seem to be able to fly vertically, which in nature, that really doesn't happen. Just like a bird or an owl does not go straight up. They take off in a 45-degree angle or something like that, but definitely not straight up.
Yeah, there have been sightings of these beings kind of propelling straight up into the air without the use of wings, almost like they've got some type of self-propulsion. I had an encounter back in 1988 of a similar type being, and this thing did the same thing. It literally shot up into the air like a rocket.
Paper Crane wishes. Thank you, Paper Crane, for wishes for also being with me when I was in Hawaii. All of you people, fine folks who were on it and got the alerts when I was live streaming. And if you don't get alerts, you have to subscribe and please tap that bell to get notifications. Paper Crane Wishes says that she remembers all those flying humanoid sightings in Mexico. I remember them too from Jaime Maussan. What do you know about them? Are they similar to what you've seen?
No, those aren't similar. These, there were some videos made of these things. They were actually calling them flying witches. And in fact, the police officer, I don't know if it's in Monterey or another smaller town, but he actually claims to have had an encounter with one of these things. But the videos actually looked like something that was stationary but moving through the air. It was a big buzz about it maybe a decade or so ago. I have talked to several investigators about those sightings, Ken Gerhardt in particular. He investigated it, and it's an enigma. Basically, we really don't know what it was.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it still continues to this day.
Yeah, I haven't seen as many reports, but I do occasionally pop up. One occasionally pops up on YouTube, or somebody makes a report.
Let me just give a shout out for the super chat from Rolf Pfeiffer Muller. Thank you again. Now, let me see. Lasha had another one here. I'm just going to read it directly what she wrote. I was wondering all about these stick people that have been reported. Can you bring us up to date on what they are and where they have been spotted?
Well, I had a report recently of this being that people have been calling a stick person. Now, I don't know if they're misidentifying it with a tall gray or a type of possibly even a Wendigo or some other type of humanoid, what people call a rake or a flesh gate. I don't know what it is. I mean, this is something that it's fairly new. There's been a lot of talk about it on the internet. I just really know what it is. It's some type of unknown humanoid that people are beginning to report. As far as specific areas where it's occurring, I don't know. I don't know of anything specific as far as if it's in one area or not. It seems to be one of these things that just pops up at different locations.
Now, here is an interesting question because I've noticed that a lot of times when people report UFO activity or even close encounters of the third kind or worse, the fourth kind, where they're taken, that they start having poltergeist activity in their homes or other supernatural activities. So this is what the beginning of the question is. This is from Manuel Silva. Is there, or are there, I should say, are there any UFO or alien activity in Skunkworks Palmdale, California location?
There have been reports. I haven't looked into any of those personally. I have heard reports though.
Crystal Keith, I don't, maybe you could understand the question. It's just 3 words. She goes, where's his feet? Maybe she's referring to the thumbnail of this flying humanoid, and clearly it doesn't look from this image that I'm looking at like its feet, unless it's at such an angle where you're looking straight on and the feet would be looking towards you, which means that it wouldn't look like feet. But have you ever come across cases of flying humanoids that had legs but no feet?
A lot of the sightings in Chicago were described as having some type of legs. As far as feet go, the only sightings where they had feet was where they were actually standing at a location and not flying. But there have been some.
Okay, Lars Saturn. What about black-eyed kids or black-eyed children is what other people call them?
Well, see, this is another phenomena that we really have very little answers to. Are they alien? Are they hybrids? Are they something else? We really don't know. In my most recent book, I kind of stated in there. Well, I did state in there that some humanoids or some unknown beings I wasn't going to cover in the book. The book was titled Alien Disclosure, and the black-eyed kids, the winged humanoids. I kind of stayed away from those until we get a few more answers to it. There have been a lot of different sightings, a lot of reports over the years. David Weatherly had been investigating these for years. He kind of started this out as far as getting the reports and talking about it, and then publishing about it. And we have found over the years that there have been a lot of different reports. I've received a lot of reports over the years as well. But as far as what it is, we really don't know.
This question actually is a continuation. Let me find it again. I'm glad everybody in chat, keep him coming. Lon definitely said he wants questions, so please keep him coming, and I'm glad you guys are definitely participating. Back to Manuel Silva. Let me see here. There was two parts to it. So, have you guys heard anything about Angeles Crest and the UFO activity and also Dogman activity there?
In particular, I don't know of that area. No, I can't
right by me. But let's expand the area and throughout the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Well, the upright canine phenomena is something that some people call Dogman. This is something that we have looked into, in particular here in Pennsylvania, where I'm at. We've had reports. Well, of course, Linda Godfrey has been discussing and writing about the Beast of Bray Road for many, many years. That's been a phenomena that people are still encountering these cryptid canines that are bipedal, walk on two legs. Here in Pennsylvania, we have been, my team and I in particular, Butch Witkowski and myself, have been investigating these upright canines in Pennsylvania throughout the state. In particular, in the central part of the state, we've had, I'd say, 25 very good reports in and around that number over the years. And it's something that has been popping up. And as far as UFO, is there an association with Dogman or upright canines? It very well could be. There have been a lot of UFO sightings and Bigfoot simultaneously being seen together or in proximity. Stan Gordon has talked about that for many, many years. He's received a lot of reports with that type of activity. As far as UFOs and upright canines, it's possible. We have a lot of UFO activity here in Pennsylvania, but at this point, we really can't make the connection.
It's ironic you mentioned Stan Gordon. That's who I'm going to be speaking to on Thursday. So talk about synchronicity, literally. Okay, let me go to more since a lot are popping up. Let me ask directly out here for, where is it? Josie Flores. Can you rephrase that question? I'll just read what she wrote, and I think there might be, unless it's the proper question, possibly a wrong spelling of a word. Is it possible the rake is a science experiment put out to find out how we react together?
Oh, I don't think so. This being has been seen for centuries, basically. A lot of the First Nations people, Native Americans, have mentioned or talked about a similar type of being, which is a thin humanoid, pale in color, that it's said to be a flesh eater. And I've actually started investigating some of the sightings that I've been receiving, even to the point where I associate some of these with Wendigo sightings. So is the Wendigo and the rake the same being? It's possible. I think I see a lot of characteristics that are similar to it. But no, this is something that has been known about for centuries.
Oh, well then let me apologize here to Josie because I asked if it was the wrong word. So you are aware of the rake. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
excellent. Now, continuing with questions. I'm not censoring, I'm just reading them. Frankie Zomboy, what about aliens in Colorado airports? I'm assuming Frankie's talking about the murals that were in the airport itself. I'm not sure, but that's what I'm
Well,
getting
he's
from it.
probably talking about Denver International.
Yes.
It's a fairly new airport. I think it was probably built about 20 years ago. But it's got a lot of strange symbolism in it. It's kind of a bizarre place and I've never been there, but I've talked to a lot of people, and there were a few reports that came out of an actual reptilian type of alien being or whatever at the location. People had seen this thing. I don't know how true that is. Um, but I do know a lot of people associate a lot of weird activity with the airport itself.
Yeah, when I was through Denver, this must have been in the late 90s, I was blown away to see some of those murals. It looked like
Mhm.
almost like Armageddon, with the gas masks. And what were they trying to portray? You can't just say, oh, it's just artists, having some fun of creating something that would, be fun or pleasant as you pass by. That was very, very ominous. That's just my 2 cents on that. Let me ask this from Soul Brava 19, and let me just say this, Soul Brava 19. Thank you for putting your question in caps. If everybody else can please write your question in caps. If you don't see them, don't worry. I'm able to see them. That way I can know those are questions and not just comments. This is the question. Has there been anything recent in the, I hope I said this right, Lycan or Lycan, Lycan loop? If
Yeah.
so, what kind of report?
Well, the Lichen Loop is an area of central Pennsylvania that Butch Wachowski and myself have been receiving a majority of the upright canine reports. Um, we had a report recently in a Center County, Pennsylvania, at Rothrock State Park, where in fact a group of 3 couples had a very close encounter with an upright canine, and it was kind of an ominous encounter because this thing did seem somewhat aggressive. And the description was 8 to 9 foot in height, a wolf head, very muscular body, legs, arms like a human, sparse hair. I tell you, a lot of descriptions that we have received over the years. Just think about the image of the lichens from the Underworld series. What they called the lichens are the werewolves. That's what I'm telling you. Some of the descriptions are very similar to that, and they're very, very ominous looking.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We have had there have been hunters who have made reports of these beings in Pennsylvania. They've been armed, but they're so staggered and shocked by encountering one of these beings, they don't even think about taking a shot at it.
Yeah, you'd run, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
They back off. The things stand their ground. Very rarely will they run off. So this is something that we've been investigating intensely over the last 3 to 4 years. And it's, at this point right now, all we can do is take the reports, go to the locations, talk to the witnesses. Butch has been very good about that. He's been heading out all over the state, talking to witnesses and investigating these incidents. As far as the lake and loop, I'd say right at this point, I'd say 75 to 80% of these sightings have been in that area. And this loop runs from just near Clearfield County, southeast into York County, Pennsylvania. So it's quite a large area.
This is from King Air. Before I ask King Air's question, let me just say, most of you know I'm a skydiver. I just wanted to let you know that the Super King Air was the fastest plane to ever bring me to altitude. 7 minutes to 14,000 feet. So if any of you are skydivers, there's only one Super King Air in the U.S. It's based in Minnesota. If you have a chance, fly in that plane. Okay, King Air's question. Do you meditate? Do you communicate with ETs? 2 questions, really.
I wouldn't say I meditate. I'm a trained remote viewer.
Oh.
I have been involved with a lot of distance cases, as far as a spiritual infestation cases. But I have had communication with otherworldly beings, non-terrestrials, over the years. I have had actually 3 physical encounters and 1 encounter in which there was lost time. So I believe I was physically taken. Not sure, but the other encounters, and 1 encounter in particular where I was kind of shown a lot of different scenarios. That was through some type of mental communication.
Before I jump to more questions, and I want to say thank you to all you folks in the chat who are writing in caps so I can differentiate between questions and comments. My question to you is, Lon, is have you ever, in the communications, what do they tell you?
Well, first of all, let me say I've been working with an individual for over a decade who has had a lot of contact with non-terrestrials. His name is David Eckhart. I've been working with him for over a decade now, and since I've been working with him, I have been experiencing a lot of different things. As far as communication goes, it normally happens in that period before, from being awake to falling asleep. I'm very conscious of what happens. It's not like a vivid dream. It's very hard to describe. It's not meditation. It's really hard to describe what it is, but it seems very real to me. It's not a lot of crazy stuff going on like you would have in a dream, but I do believe that I have really been told a lot of different things, and I actually describe some of it in my new book.
The Alien Disclosure book?
Yes.
Now, let me ask this. This is also from Frankie Zomboy. What paranormal things have you heard around the military colleges, Valley Gorge, etc.? Military collages, I think is what it says, yeah.
No, I can't recall anything. I don't know if the question is correct or not. I don't really understand what he's trying to say.
Frankie, if you could rewrite that question, that would be great. I'll be more than happy to ask it. Lasha Senyak, has anyone ever found any physical evidence of these beings?
What do you mean, extraterrestrials?
I'm assuming it was about the flying humanoids.
Oh, the flying humanoids. No, that's something that makes us kind of an enigma. We have not found any physical evidence. It's all been anecdotal evidence. We do have an indiscernible photograph of one of these beings, but the sightings have been so fleeting that by the time somebody gets gets their cell phone out to take a photograph and get it ready to take, it's gone. I mean, these have been very fleeting sightings, and I think a lot of it has to do with shock as well. There have been a lot of several of the witnesses have had physical manifestations. In other words, they have felt weak. They feel a sense of foreboding. But other than that, no, we have not had any physical evidence.
Frankie wrote about the question of the collages. He's meaning the military collages in Pennsylvania, if you know what that talking about. I've never been there, so I can't say.
I don't. Is he saying colleges? I mean, there are several military schools in Pennsylvania.
I first thought that's what it was, but it's spelled Collage. And
no, I don't know I don't know what that is.
Okay, no problem. Frankie, if you find something more in detail, then considering that Mr. Strickler is in Pennsylvania as we speak, and that's where he lives, just like he mentioned that Gettysburg, where he grew up 11 miles, you said, right?
Yeah, and I actually moved away when I got out of high school. I lived near Baltimore for almost 40 years, and I moved back up to a town, Cherrystown, which is a little closer to Gettysburg and Hanover. Not much, but it's about 10 to 11 miles away from Gettysburg.
Before I ask this next question, back what I was telling you near the beginning when you mentioned Gettysburg, how I've seen an amazing array of videos and photos and testimony, people that were really scared. Obviously there's hoaxers everywhere, especially people who are trying to get into the movie studios by creating CGI, get hired. But some of them, they're not looking for credit or anything like that. They're just trying to show you what they saw themselves. And the reactions you can tell are sincere fear as opposed to those who are trying to make it in that way. Have you yourself seen any ghosts in Gettysburg? Maybe soldiers? I know you said you heard sounds of what like be soldiers, but have you ever had anything come up to you, or maybe as you're driving across the road, an apparition that you could see right through it?
I have seen manifestations all my life. Now, people can call them ghosts or whatever. I've seen, in I guess in all different forms. I mean, some have been very slight, very wispy type beings, but I have actually seen full body apparitions as well. Are these? The one that it kind of gets me more than anything was my aunt when she passed away, manifested in my bedroom the night she died. That was probably the closest to a actual physical type manifestation that I've run across.
Now, as being a Fortean researcher for so many years, as me, not as long as you, I have heard so many stories of people as they pass away that very same night they appear in either all of the family members or the closest family members' bedroom, sometimes silent, sometimes saying something and then disappearing, but it's very what are the chances that the ghost is seen that day, not days after, years later, but the night in bedrooms that that person passes away. That's an
Well,
anomaly in itself.
yeah, I can tell you what happened to me. I was, how old was I? Uh, I don't know, about 21, maybe a little younger than that. My wife and I were in bed. My first wife and I were sleeping, and we lived in a town called Sykesville, Maryland, which is probably 45 to 50 miles from where my aunt was living at. Well, my mother lived about 10 miles from me, and my grandmother lived in the same very near my aunt. So what happened was, we were in bed, and I had known my aunt was sick. She had cancer, and but she seemed to be in remission. She seemed to be doing fine. Well, anyway, that particular night, I was woke by a very bright light at the head of the bed. And in fact, my wife woke up as well. And the apparition of my aunt, we called her Lydie, my Aunt Lydie actually manifested. And it was very, very real. And you could tell it was her. And she seemed to be trying to tell me something. Her mouth was moving. Her arms were outstretched. Her and I were very close. She was almost like a second mother to me as I was growing up. Well, anyway, we had seen that. My wife was so scared, she actually jumped out of bed and ran to my daughter's room.
Jeez.
But the apparition lasted for about 10 seconds or so. Then she just faded away. Well, I was pretty sure that she had just passed. But not more than 10 to 15 seconds after it, I got a phone call. My mother was on the phone. And she said, "Lon, I just saw Aunt Lydie." I said, "Well, I did too." And she said, "Well, I just wanted to let you know I haven't heard anything. Let me call Mom." So she went to call her mother, my grandmother. And about 10 minutes later, she called me back and said, "Yeah, Grandma saw her too." And the hospital contacted my grandfather's sister, and said she had just passed away. So they had rushed her to the hospital, and she died on the way. So yeah, it happened to me. I have heard other stories of people having it happen like that to them as well. So I guess if there's a real strong connection, it will happen. And in my case, there was a very strong connection. And I was kind of grateful for it. I mean, I really was. I wasn't scared or anything, but since her and I were very close, it was. I was kind of grateful for it.
This is actually very similar to, I believe his name is Greg Lawson, a guest I had on probably about a month ago, where I don't know if it was maybe his grandfather passed away, but when they had a family reunion and he mentioned it, so many others in the family that were close to him also said they were visited that very night. So
Yeah.
I think it does have to do with the fact that you are absolutely having a connection with your grandmother. Okay, here is Lasha. No, I asked that. Soul Brava 19. When is the last time a goat man has been sighted in Maryland?
Well, the phenomena of the goat man, what people call the Patuxent goat man, I don't know when the last sighting has been. Now, there have been sightings of humanoid-like beings that could be associated with the goat man phenomena in recent years. But I would say maybe one or two within the last decade. This is, for people who don't know who the Maryland goat man is, this is a humanoid-like being that supposedly looks like a man with the head of a goat.
Wow.
And has been seen in the areas around Patuxent, it's a Navy ground. It's a Navy laboratory. I don't know if it's still there or not. It's in Billy, Maryland, and there's always been a rumor that this thing is an experiment, a government experiment, or something to that effect. It has been seen in other areas around Prince George's County, but I don't know how reliable those sightings are. But there has been a history of these sightings.
Well, let me ask you: is Fort Detrick in Maryland?
Yeah, Fort Detrick's in Frederick.
Okay.
That's in the other part of the state.
Because Fort Detrick, we know, harbors a lot of these really serious biochemical warfare, but at the same time, people also suggest that they're playing around with DNA and mixing different animals with others. So I'm wondering if this goat man came about, like you said, is it a hybrid, a crossbreed between the two?
It's possible. Maryland, the areas around Baltimore and Washington, in those suburbs, there are a lot of unmarked buildings in a lot of areas where government research is done. Even the Edgewood Proving Grounds in those areas. I've heard a lot of rumors over the years. A lot of rumors of even Bigfoot being done. I mean, used for testing or other type of government projects. I have looked into it for several years. I've taken a lot of stories from people. I've even talked to a gentleman who was in the Air Force and was actually privy to some of the experiments that supposedly happened at Edgewood.
Jeez.
I don't know. I mean, you do, when you're in an area like that and a lot of strange things occur, people do kind of tend to think, we're in that area where there's a lot of government facilities. There must be some testing going on. It's the same out in New Mexico as well. The area around the Four Corners and into northern New Mexico, southern Colorado, there've been a lot of weird sightings of unknown beings, and a lot of times people associate it with either the Dulce Underground,
Yes.
supposed Dulce Underground,
Base.
or Los Alamos, or other areas or other government facilities in that area. So, is it true? Who knows? I mean, I heard and seen some evidence that kind of tend to, make you think that there may be something going on. But as far as solid proof, it's hard to distinguish.
Especially since a lot of these people have security oaths, humans that you can't talk to and get answers, or these beings, whether they be ETs or Dogman or Mothman. It's not, or a ghost. We can't just call them up or reach out to them and say, hey, can we interview you for 2 hours and maybe take some photos of you posing in positions or with me? The only way we're going to get it is what you've been doing, researching, because they're not, around. A newspaper reporter can't just call down a E.T. Craft and say, can I get 20 minutes with you in a quote? It just doesn't happen.
I try to be more pragmatic when it comes to these type of reports, but there is a shred of believability with some of this stuff, but who knows? You hear a whole lot of things, and especially me. I mean, I get a lot of reports of a lot of different things, and it's kind of separating the chaff from the wheat for the most part.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Roll Pfeiffer Muller. First, again, let me say thank you again for the super chat. Now, here comes a question for you. I'm just going to read it directly instead of rewording the words that should be for you. Please ask him if he is aware that multiple blogs, editors, and users are using his investigative exertions for many, many years. Probably copyright infringement?
Yeah, I run into a lot of that. I do what I can to try to alleviate it, but it's, when you have a blog like I do and you do a lot of different writing and you're out there for a lot of different reports and such, stuff's going to get copied. You can't catch it all.
Especially if it's international. These days,
Sure.
it's not like U.S. copyright or trademark or patents even are protected outside of our borders. That's why if you invent something, if you're planning to have this product worldwide, you need more than a U.S. patent. You need a European patent, an international patent. I mean, there's so many. And then there's countries that just don't oblige, don't care. Like, I don't want to name too many countries, but look at China. If we build something here, it doesn't matter if it's protected and has a patent. It's going to be built over there and knocked off in some sort of way. As a matter of fact, all their military R&D was taken from us, whether it be from hacked into our military, where we have our plans, to just having spies, or worst case scenario, having maybe a Reaper drone or one of those Predator drones being shot down, or comes down in China, and then all of a sudden they have something to reverse engineer. So the trillions of dollars we put into our military R&D, it doesn't really matter when you're dealing with some other countries.
I don't mind. Honestly, I don't mind when people use my research, my team's research, if it's attributed correctly, if there's a link back to the original story, the original research. But when somebody takes the information, even copies it out of my book and attributes it to themselves, that's a different story. And I try to keep up with a lot of it.
That's actually really sad if someone takes what you and your team researched and wrote a story with what the evidence available to you, photographs, testimony, and then instead of giving a link to the source, showing people where they can read more about that and other topics and claim it as their own, I think is pretty sad and low to do. So I feel for you there.
It's fairly blatant nowadays because there's just so much out on the internet. It's hard to keep track of it. But, with somebody, I do have a lot of people that contact me and ask me if they can use it. If they attribute it to me and they give me credit for it, I usually don't have a problem with it.
Unfortunately, thanks. There are more videos of my shows, of the several hundreds on my YouTube channel, than there are more shows people have copied and stole and put on their own channels. Even though it's me interviewing whichever guest, it's taken on theirs and it's monetized. And like you said, it's really hard to keep up with them daily. All right, here is Manuel Silva. Was the Battle of Los Angeles a cover-up? Supposedly, the government issued a statement notifying the public that it was just a weather balloon. Was it an alien ship?
From the information that I've looked at over the years, I believe it was actually a otherworldly craft of some type. I mean, the fact that they shot so much artillery at this thing and it didn't really do much of anything.
Yeah.
I tend to believe that it was something other than earthly.
12 to 1,400 artillery shells is what I heard. And if it was a balloon, one alone would pop it and it would come down. But no, that's not what happened. Okay, here's a sort of follow-up, but it's on a different question. Do you believe that JFK was killed because he knew too much, especially when it came to the UFO and U.S. cover-up?
I have mulled this question over for many, many years. I don't know. I mean, I know there was a theory that he was going to release information as far as the UFO phenomena. I don't know. I really don't know. They're you know the Kennedy brothers tended to piss off a lot of people. Let's put it that way over the years, and it could have been a lot of reasons why he was assassinated.
Especially the
Who?
mob.
Yeah,
RFK versus the mob. That's a bad idea
yeah.
considering.
It's it's just one of those mysteries that I don't know if we're ever going to find a definitive answer to it.
And you know what? I agree with that. And also Marilyn Monroe. I mean, what sort of secrets was she privy to when she slept with both brothers? So, that's another one of those mysteries that I would pretty much, to me, I would first, if I had the resources and availability of people to actually talk, I'd start with JFK, then go to RFK, and then, of course, go to Maryland. All right, here is another one for you. Frankie Zomboy. Again, thank you, Frankie, for putting it in caps so I could see this. What investigations has he done around the Pennsylvania area? Any around the military colleges like Valley Forge? And you're right,
Okay.
it is colleges, yes.
Um, no, not really. The colleges, in particular, Pennsylvania is, it's a very interesting state as far as cryptid activity and paranormal activity. There seem to be a wide variety of sightings, reports, encounters. Like I said, Stan Gordon, you'll be talking to him. He'll tell you. He has been receiving reports of a variety of things over the years. Now, as far as the colleges and Valley Forge, and there are several throughout the state. I don't know of anything in particular. Now, I do know that a lot of these military schools do tend to have paranormal activity associated with them. But then again, a lot of areas, in particular colleges and universities, where a lot of people congregate, does tend to have a lot of paranormal activity. Um, that's just a fact.
That's true. That's true. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it's because of either weapons stored there, clearly, from what people like Stan Friedman said. And it's kind of obvious that if you have so many sightings of these craft that were unexplainable, after we detonated the first bomb at the Trinity site, and then along with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then continuing the nuclear testing, that I would think that those in other planets, star systems, galaxies, wherever, even other multiverses, other dimensions, I would think that they would be worried. What the heck are we doing that's affecting them? And this goes back to the basics of what humans are. We find a way to split an atom, and what's the first thing we do with it, Lon? We build a weapon to kill people. Nothing like, how can this better humanity? No, let's just find a way to kill more people. And yeah, when you have wars and people attacking you, it has to stop. But to the scale of where generals are thinking, oh, how can we militarize this weapon or technology? I don't think that another civilization who is probably higher in consciousness and other things like that would think that. If they created something new, I would think it would be I would hope, that's the key word, hope, it would be better for their civilization as opposed to what we do. The very first thing, most of the things we use as technology, laptops, smartphones, the first applications were all military. And you could pretty much say that about all the good technology. That's my little 2 cents. Okay, here is another one for you. We asked about the Pennsylvania LM. And first of all, L, let me just thank you for thanking me for asking this question. You don't have to thank me. I appreciate it, though. This is what this is about. Has Lon noticed a pattern or commonality among the witnesses or locations of the creature sightings?
I don't know. It's I guess it depends on what is going on. Uh, we talk about the upright canines. There have been uh, instances where certain people tend to get uh, sightings of these beings, and in fact, there have been several sightings in a town in Cambria County called Portage, where there have been, I don't know, maybe Butch can give me some more of these, but I'd say at least 3 to 4 very good sightings within the town. And the people that had the sightings were known to each other. I think 2 of them were related. But other than that, I don't know. I mean, I don't really sense that there, if you're talking about a connection, a family connection, as far as, cryptid activity and sightings and such, I don't know if there's really a connection or not. In Chicago sightings of these winged humanoids, it ran the gamut of the people who had seen these things, all socioeconomic ranges of people, different neighborhoods. It was a lot of different type of people, different races, different creeds and such. So, overall, I don't think there's a whole lot of connection as far as that goes.
Before I ask this next question, staying with Chicago and these flying humanoids, was there an event that maybe that you could attribute to that happened right before this influx of these flying humanoids started to show up?
Not really. This is one of these things we've been trying to work on and try to get a gauge of why it happened. It seems everybody in our group kind of has their own take on why this is going on. Now, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who was part of the investigating group, my group, her theory was it may have been a meteorite that hit Lake Michigan previous to the sighting starting. I don't know if that has a connection or not. A lot of the Tobias Whalen has stated, who's another investigator in our group, stated that he believes that water in Lake Michigan itself has something to do with the sightings. I personally believe myself that these beings are coming from another reality of some type. Though they're corporeal, I mean, they're actually flesh and blood, but they are moving in between our reality and another reality for whatever reason. We have had 2 reports so far that state that the witness actually saw these beings just suddenly disappear, like it went through a hidden doorway.
Like a portal.
And that's something we have to take in consideration. The beings themselves, I personally believe that there were at least 3 of these beings being seen in and around the Chicago area, and that's only because of slight description differences, proximity to the sighting, and so forth. But I don't think it was just one being. I think it was several different ones.
Can you describe, this is my question before I go back to the chat, the different types of these 3 beings? Were they different heights, different colors, or anything like that?
The differences were with the wings in some instances. Some had red eyes. A couple had what people described as a type of a ray coming off the top of the head, like a peak or something coming to the top of the head. Some of the arms were attached to the wings. Some of the arms were detached from the wings. Some were more aggressive than others. The coloring was a little different on some of them. So, I don't know if it was just perception differences, but I believe from what the evidence that we received, it was more than one being.
Now, Mr. Silva asks, can the guest tell us about the Railroad House Inn in Marietta, Pennsylvania?
Well, I don't know anything about that. Not particularly.
Okay. And Lasha is also throwing a comment, which is Pennsylvania seems like a real hotspot of activity, right?
Oh, it is, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely get that from ghost hunters, people looking for ETs, and there's a lot of history, a lot of energy's been there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see here. I'm just looking through to see. Lasha says she's never heard of a goat man, but you just mentioned it. Lasha. Okay.
Well, this goat man phenomenon just didn't happen in Maryland. It's something that has been going on in a lot of different locations.
Globally, would you say? All continents?
I possibly, but I'd say most reports come from the United States.
Lasha's question now. Is the Dogman and the Goatman, do they wear clothing or are they stark?
Not that any of the reports that we received. They're all stark. I mean, it's not like what somebody would associate with a werewolf that, transformed into a being. I mean, a human turns for a being and having clothes now, huh? No, we haven't received reports like that.
Or like Bigfoot, which clearly is not wearing anything other than the fur.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Silva asks, does your guest know about the Kecksburg UFO incident?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Stan Gordon's the person to talk about that. He's written extensively about it. But I'm aware of the incident and supposed activity took place afterwards.
Third Phase of Moon is in the chat. Let me just give a big shout out to the Cousins brothers. Thank you, Blake and Brent, for hosting me 8 days in Hawaii on the Big Island. Like I said, everybody, stay tuned for when I post that amazing video that they helped create with me. Brent filming, Blake directing, or both directing, on the Ancient Aliens of Hawaii. You'll see that very soon. There's a comment here from them. There was just a flying humanoid in Burbank a couple days ago, and they posted the video. So if anyone wants to see it, please go to Third Phase of Moon. Like I said, one of the world's largest UFO YouTube channels. Okay. Manuel Silva again. What was the scariest experience you have ever had?
I'd say the scariest was the actual encounter of the winged being that I had back in 1988. Now, I did have a Bigfoot encounter in 1981, but I'd say the flying being encounter was probably the most, I don't know, it impacted me more than the other one.
Okay, let me see if I see anything else. Let's talk about Bigfoot for a second. Have you, I would assume in Pennsylvania, there is plenty of Bigfoot sightings. Have you come across that in your studies, in your blog?
Oh, yeah, research? I mean, there have been, Bigfoot activity in the state of Pennsylvania kind of seems to come in waves. There have been years where we had a few sightings. Then there were years where there were a lot of sightings. I'd say that most of let's put it this way. I live in South Central Pennsylvania. I live in Adams County now, but York County, in that area, South Central Pennsylvania, we have a lot of Bigfoot activity around here. Now, one of my associates and friends by the name of Tim Renner, he has been doing investigations in southern York County for many, many years, northern Maryland. And the activity is pretty rampant up and down the Susquehanna River Valley. So, there's a lot of Bigfoot activity in the state. Western Pennsylvania, in particular, there's a lot of Bigfoot activity.
This is back to what you mentioned about Goatman. Third phase of the moon. I'm going to ask the questions that they have written, even though you covered what you said about Goatman. So let me just say it again, especially for people who joined in later. Mm-hmm. Where did the Goatman come from? Is it a hybrid, and did you yourself see the Goatman?
I don't really know where it came from. All I know are from rumors. The original Goatman was said to have come from the Navy's Patuxent Research Area, which is in Bowie, Maryland, near Laurel, Maryland. I have never seen one. I don't know of anyone who's seen one, so.
Neither did I. As a matter of fact, not until I started talking to you, I didn't even think that existed. But at the same time, Lon, I'm not shocked. You hear about so many different beings, so many different animals that we have yet to discover that are making their appearances, not to mention all the hybridization that we humans are doing in different laboratories, like the rat with the human ear or the Montauk monster. To me, I think it's not so much hidden like in the deep waters or the bottom of the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean. I think a lot of these are explained in the sense that scientists are messing around with two different types of mammals and trying to create their own sort of, I don't know if it's a super soldier or what the reason is, or to test the limits of how far can they go merging one or two or more species together to create something that does not exist. And that actually goes back to what we assume or has been told from us to us from people like Eric von Doniken about that we even Bob Lazar mentioned this when he was at Area 51, specifically S4 in Nevada, that we Homo sapiens are created by the ETs coming to Earth thousands of years ago and taken already evolving primates and merging the DNA with them to create Homo sapiens. So to think that it's impossible, I highly doubt that. I think that is possible.
Let me say that my recent book, Alien Disclosure: Experiencers Expose Reality, I write about a lot of that. I have been shown a lot of different scenarios that deal with that. The fact that humans were affected and changed by the intervention of otherworldly beings. I truly believe it. They talk about the missing link.
Yes.
Well, the missing link is most, in my opinion, is some type of intervention somewhere down the line. But like I said, I've written all about my personal feelings and things I've been shown. So if you read the book, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I've got a lot of firsthand experiencer reports in there, and people that I have worked with, experiencers that have confided in me, and there's a lot there to chew on.
That's two things. That's pretty much the only thing we can do is, one, talk to the first-hand witness, and if possible, get video, if not picture evidence, sometimes audio of like Bigfoot. That's the extent of what we're ever going to see, unfortunately. That's just my opinion.
Well, I do have some photographs of supposed alien beings that were provided to me by David Eckhart, who has been experiencing encounters for many, many years. He's been fortunate enough to gather photographic evidence over the years. Uh, he's a fascinating individual, and I write a lot about what he has gone through over the years. And he's kind of opened my eyes to a lot of this phenomena. It's it's hard to explain. He doesn't have all the answers. He's confused by it a lot as well. I mean, he has a lot of questions. He and I will talk about it, and we try to come up with some type of sense of why these things, what their agenda is. I think there is an agenda. I think there overall it's the biological, technological singularity agenda, to where we have been manipulated to serve them to some capacity. But there is that type of evidence, and talking to him over the years and to others over the years, I truly believe that there is we do have a very direct connection with these beings.
You're absolutely right. I've always believed that the missing link is intervention from a not one, but probably more. Because, in the 80s when I was in school, we were told that this solar system is the only one with planets, and then all of a sudden comes the exoplanets, and then all of a sudden comes the Goldilocks planets. And last time Stanton Friedman was on, he said originally it was estimated, it was like a fraction of each star would have, so let's just say maybe, I don't know, for every 100 stars, there might be one planet. But now, before he passed away, the estimation that he gave was much higher. For each star is approximately 1.8 planets. That's a phenomenally huge number. And I can't even imagine when we can't even count all the galaxies, let alone the stars in each of these galaxies, which are suns. So is there intelligent life that is visiting us and has been visiting us? In my opinion, I definitely think so. And in history books, including the Bible, there's a lot of stories of people interacting with things that are not human. Now, let me ask you about Dezombified. Let me find this question here, which is Dezombified. Where are you? Sorry, lots of chats in here. He wants to know more about cryptids. I'm just trying to find the exact question. Okay. Well, just tell us about cryptid in general. Cryptid what? Cryptid creatures? Cryptozoology?
Well, the word cryptid basically is used to describe a being that is not recognized by science. That's where the cryptozoology, I guess, was the actual word that people have used over the years. But cryptid, in actuality, cryptid finally, the word cryptid finally made the Webster Meridian Dictionary recently.
Wow.
So it is a recognized word. I don't have to type it anymore, and then gets underlined because I made a mistake. But no, it's basically the study of unknown beings not recognized by science.
And you know what? Each year we are discovering new species, and it just blows my mind for us to think that we know of everything that lives here. We do not have the capabilities to get to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean or the deepest, the Indian Ocean. And it wasn't up until several years ago, not like decades, but where they realized that you don't necessarily need light to survive. There are creatures that live at the bottom of the ocean that are using the heat from the fissures on the cracks. And that's all they need, the water and the fissures. And you know what? What about those others that are living in creatures, even single celled creatures, that are living in something like that's not water, something that would kill us, and yet they're thriving and alive?
Well, I mean, just look at the mountain gorilla. It was considered an unknown species, a cryptid per se, up until less than 100 years ago when they finally, they finally discovered that it does exist. I mean, we have known about gorillas all our lives. It doesn't seem like it's something that was unknown, but in fact, it really was not too long ago.
Yes, yes, agreed. Now let me switch gears since we are kind of nearing the end, and I haven't talked much about Mothman throughout the shows, and especially since you did write, and you did mention it early on, that you wrote, the first one was the Mothman Prophecies. Yours is, let me see if I wrote it down, Mothman, what's the name of the book?
Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's
Dynasty.
Winged Humanoids.
There you go. Now, are people still seeing Mothman to this day? Because I thought after the bridge collapse, I think it was West Virginia, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Mothman, or the description of the Mothman from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, it is still being seen. It has been seen ever since those sightings. And in fact, there had been similar type sightings in history of these winged type beings that had the moth-like wings. But the area around Point Pleasant, in and around Point Pleasant, there's still sightings. The area of the West Virginia Ordnance Works where many of the sightings had taken place, there are still sightings there. But the Mothman phenomena is basically a worldwide phenomena, and in particular North America. So it's still going on. Now, the Chicago sightings were of a winged humanoid, not described in the most part as the actual Mothman. You know, the Chicago Mothman moniker kind of got picked up by the press, and they kind of went with it. So that's why they call it the Mothman. It gets for more recognition. But, the winged humanoid phenomena in general is, this is something that has been going on for quite some time now.
Thousands of years. And remember earlier I was saying when I'd see icons, paintings, or anything of the angels that had wings, that it represented from the painter that they were trying to tell us that they fly, whether through technology or supernatural powers. But so many different people also describe beings with wings. I mean, literally large wings, just like one of the pictures I have on YouTube right now of the Mothman. Now, you said North America. How far back in history have you seen it? Do the Native Americans talk about Mothman?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this goes back many, many centuries. These winged beings, they maybe have been described more so as spirits or, another type of spiritual being, but they have been described in the folklore and the tradition of a lot of the First Nations people.
Now, when I was asking you about cryptids, now I finally found the question, and it's not as broad as I was asking about to tell us about them. Dezombified, one of my moderators. Okay, how involved is the government in these cryptids?
Oh, I think they're involved to a larger degree than most people may think they are. There have been a lot of stories, several stories of the government being involved with, capture of Bigfoot. And, one story in particular, which kind of strikes me, is the is the Mount St. Helens eruption,
Ah, yes,
where
1980. Yeah.
people had actually witnessed dead Bigfoot being collected
Government.
by government people, a part of the government, and being airlifted out of the area. Uh, that story has been going around for a while now, but it does make some sense as far as them being involved with actual research. Like I said before, I have heard a lot of different things. I think some of them maybe have some validity to them. So I think the government is deeply involved with it. I really do. Um, I can't prove that. I can just go by, what I think and what I've heard. But I think they do have some involvement in it.
I'm really glad you brought that up because when there are volcanic eruptions or even just volcanic activity, a lot of people report UFOs. A lot of videos show craft going inside the volcanoes, coming outside, etc. And every time I've done a show on Bigfoot, the biggest thing is we've never found a carcass. But
Right.
now this is the first time I've heard this, and I'm not surprised that it was the government that was the one that had to airlift them, considering the weight. But they did find carcasses, so that right there is you gave an answer to a lot of people. I think it's Jeff Meldrum is the Bigfoot investigator.
Yeah, Jeff Meldrum.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna bring that to him unless he mentions that. But he was the one that was saying, if only there was a carcass of one. Why isn't there a dead Bigfoot anywhere? But clearly, if it's in the Blue Room at Wright-Patterson or at Fort Detrick or wherever, I've always argued this, that I don't think that government necessarily is involved as it used to be, meaning that because of the Freedom of Information Act, why would they house stuff when they have to deal with oversight from us? Why not just give it over to private military contractors, corporations, who have no oversight? They could do whatever the heck they want. They're still using our tax dollars, Uncle Sam's money, are sanctioned to essentially do whatever the hell they want. And they could reverse engineer craft. They could study these carcasses of these Bigfoot or these ETs in private. And I would think the penalties, because they're private corporations, I don't think they're going to say, okay, you're going to get a fine and some imprisonment. You'd probably be found dead in a ditch somewhere or made to look like an accident if you wrong some of those guys, because I know my brothers are going to hate me when I say this to him, but he works for a private military contractor, and a lot of his answers when I ask him questions are, it's classified, and he can't say anything because he'll lose his clearance.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously security clearance, secret, top secret. He can't even tell me what clearance he has anymore. But I do know that he said, if I say anything with all these computers and phones around, they're always watching you. They're always hearing, meaning I'm not saying they're spying on him, but as Snowden revealed that at any given time, this was back when Snowden came out, there was about 2 million people that were being surveyed in a much more way, a bigger way than anybody else, meaning that what did they eat for breakfast? Where are they going to in their afternoons? What do they do in their spare time? So yes, everybody has these smartphones in their hands and pockets, and women in their purses, or you're using laptops. I have laptops around me right now, and the cameras, I would think, are probably being sent to NSA and private military contractors. Very scary. Okay, let me see what else here I got for you. I see this is just a personal not a question, but a comment from Rockstar. Rockstar wants to see the upcoming metal discovery. Do you know who Clifford Stone is, Lon?
Not offhand.
Oh, okay.
I may, but I don't. I can't recall it offhand.
He was a UFO crash and retrieval guy for the U.S. Army, and he had claimed that he has a piece. So we're trying to send people, me, to Roswell with a camera crew to get this
Mm-hmm.
piece. So people are talking about that in the chat. So everybody that's listening to this, pay attention. Third Phase of Moon and Dr. J Radio Live, we are on top of it. Okay, Josie Flores asks, do you believe there is more activity with all creatures, or has it always been this busy? And if
Oh, I think there's been a lot. It's been going on for quite a while. People are more forthcoming nowadays because of a lot of reasons. I think, like I said before, the internet, the paranormal shows. There's more written material out there on different phenomena, and I don't think you can really say there's more activity now as compared to before. But people are more willing to come forward and talk about it, and I think that kind of makes people believe that there's more going on now. Now, I will say I do believe some of the activity has kind of changed in some degree. In other words, we are experiencing different type of beings as opposed to what we have seen before. In particular, I don't know. I'd say that overall humanoid research has expanded much more over the years. But I'd say it is different in that respect.
You're absolutely right, especially since here in the Americas you have Native Americans that have passed down stories for generations of the different gods that would give them intelligence, and then or other things. You even have the Mayans and people in Egypt, all around the world, Greece, that say that they were shown intelligence, taught about astronomy. Some even were taught about how to farm more efficiently. But the recurring theme, even in Hawaii, 2,500 miles from the mainland of America, even there seems to be not just stories, but some evidence that the people that live there, the Polynesians that first started living in the island chain of Hawaii, had some sort of contact with creatures from another planet, a solar system, or you could go wherever you want with it, a dimension. But it's a recurring theme that something came from the heavens above and introduced different methods and showed people new things. Pyramids, that's another great topic right there. Why is it that man, if you really think it's man that created pyramids, but why is it that our pyramids exist in so many different locations when we know throughout history there was no way that the ancient Egyptians were traveling back and forth to talk to the people where the Mayans were? It's,
Mm-hmm.
there are pyramids everywhere. Or the Nazca lines. Not too long ago, Blake and Brent Cousins of Third Phase of Moon uncovered something that is the first time I've ever seen it, and I'm sure National Geographic Discovery, they're going to get on top of this soon. There seems to be only visible from the sky. They needed a drone to get this, but it's either a compass or something. But it's lines that are intersecting, and sort of like in a you could put a circle around them, but each of these lines, when they're extended all the way as far as they are on Earth, not only do they align with the stars, they actually align and hit ancient ports. Why would people who had no ability to fly 100 years ago, or not 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500, 1,000, 3,000 years ago, do anything to appease somebody or something that could only see it from the sky, unless, of course, there were things traveling from in the sky.
Well, it has been said that a lot of the latitudes on Earth line up with different locations of unknown or strange archaeological finds. And yeah, that's true. I mean, it is. I mean, there are also different hot spots on the Earth that kind of line up too, as far as the like a grid or such. So it's plausible. It's something that's going to take a lot more research to kind of prove instead of using a theory. But I think there may be actual connections there.
Definitely. I definitely agree, and that's what I've always thought since I was a young little tot, in the early 80s. I was a product of the end of the 70s, meaning I was born right before December of 79. So even in this short amount of time, I've seen so many things, and our science has taken such a giant, huge leap. And that's why I'm wondering, when are we going to have the opportunity to find a dead Mothman or one of these winged humanoids that is either, I would hope not, gangsters in Chicago shoot it down with their Glock 9 or whatever they're using, or SKS or anything like that. I would hope people don't resort to violence, but there has to be a time where government doesn't interfere and we ourselves can get onto these creatures and examine them for ourselves.
Well, hopefully that'll happen one day. I mean, I don't advocate killing anything. People have talked about, and even made TV shows about killing Bigfoot. I don't condone that at all. But I do hope that we can naturally come upon a body at some point, and to prove that it is just not an illusion, that there is something really out there.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. And as we age more, I'm talking about the civilization here on this planet, and the more we become open, yes, skepticism is good. If people don't have any skepticism and just believe whatever they're told, well, then that's not good for you. But there is so much evidence of what we can get. Remember, we were saying earlier, you can't interview one of these beings and say, oh, hey, can we walk inside the craft that you're flying? Or how do these wings that you're flying with, or what is it that you're using to fly with? We could only get it from, like you said, first-hand witnesses and pictures and video, which is better than pictures, obviously, and Bigfoot, the audio. I'm still shocked with what you told me, that after Mount St. Helens, government employees took carcasses, not one, but more than one carcasses, and airlift them. But at the same time, it doesn't surprise me, because for whatever reason, they've been trying to hide this stuff. Now, since we got a little over, but because we started a little late, before I get to you to plug in your information, let me ask you a couple things. First of all, with all the paranormal that you've researched, do you see that there's a link between ghosts, Mothman, Bigfoot, ETs, and beyond?
Yeah, there's definitely a link between all of it, I believe.
What do you think is next for us? And personally for you, Lon, what are you going to do next?
I guess I'm just going to follow with what comes to me. I mean, just like the Chicago winged humanoids, that kind of fell in my lap. I was actually in the middle of writing the book I just got done finishing when that happened, and I ended up writing a book about that and putting this one on hold. But it just depends on what happens. I mean, if something occurs or something's seen where I think needs more investigation, when that's where I'll go. God knows where my next investigation is going to go to.
Agreed. Amen to that. Well, Lon Strickler, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Obviously, you have so much information, and we can talk for several hours. We will do this again, my friend. But before we go, please plug in your books and where people can see your blog that you do 6 days of the week.
Okay, well, my blog is Phantoms and Monsters, and you can find it at phantomsandmonsters.com. You can also sign up for a free newsletter that you receive in your mail each morning. I've been doing the blog since 2005, and
14
I guess
years, yeah.
I guess it's a work of love because sometimes I wonder why I ever got involved with it, but you can't do something like this unless you enjoy it. So I've written 7 books, and the last book was Alien Disclosure Experiencers Expose Reality, in which I describe some personal encounters, personal things that I have seen, have been involved with, as well as being, confided by other experiencers and some of the situations that they've been involved with. And I try to make the connection between humans and extraterrestrials more, I don't know, I guess I'd say more plausible. The book before that was Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's Winged Humanoids, where I write about and document the sightings in the Chicago land area. And I'll probably end up doing a second book because there's been more going on since then. But you can find all my books on Amazon. Just search Lon Strickler, and all of them will come up.
Well said. And you know what I recommend to everybody out there? Definitely check out the books and sign up for Phantoms and Monsters. I mean, 6 days a week, like you said, Lon, you have to love it if you're able to do it. And that's a lot of effort you're putting into it. So there's so much information. 14 years worth, folks. Check it out. Now, let me give a couple shout outs here first, real quick. I want to thank Third Phase of the Moon again. Blake and Brent Cousins, thank you for hosting me in Hawaii. Awesome time. And I did do some of the live streams, but the audio, sometimes the video wasn't so good, so I put them unlisted. But stay tuned for tomorrow while I will release this super good, amazing video created about the ancient aliens in Hawaii. With that being said, remember, folks, YouTube is where it's at. This is the only chat room that I watch throughout the show. And pay attention more onto YouTube because more and more videos will come. I'm not saying just the interviews. I'm talking about actual video stories, more production and things that you guys want to see, more visuals. And remember, the only thing you have to remember is the name of the show, Dr. J Radio Live. That is DRJ Radio Live. Whatever social media outlet you could think of, including my website, drjradiolive.com, is all the same. We're talking about Minds, which is the new Facebook that pays you in cryptocurrency. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, you know it all, folks. But YouTube and the website, primarily YouTube, DRJ Radio Live. With that being said, I want to thank again my guest, Mr. Lon Strickler. Thank you so much for doing all your hard work, and that's why you're on all these shows, including Coast to Coast. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and you in the audience, wherever you are around this world, I ask you all to please keep an open mind and remember, disclosure is in your hand. We are not going to get anywhere of uncovering these secrets if we don't become proactive. Don't be a passive researcher. Please do something proactive, whether it be to pass on of this interview to somebody else to listen to, or maybe one of Lon's books, or introduce people to his newsletter, or if you have any videos or anything like that, share them. It's not the era of being ridiculed like you were, say, in the 60s and 70s and even earlier than that, even the 80s and 90s. 2019 and what I see in the future is that we are going to be far, far, far more accepted. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J. Watch out for that Hawaiian ancient aliens 10-minute video that I will be putting out more than likely tomorrow, unless I do it later on tonight. And that's it. I'll catch you all soon.